Peace and love, y'all. It's your brother A.D.V.I.S S, and we are here with another episode of What's the Word Wednesday, Season 3, Episode 12. I know it's been a minute, but we're back. I'm grateful to be back. Well-deserved break, but we got to get back at this community talk and conversation. So, as we usually do, I'm going to go ahead. I put up the logo, as well as I'm going to put in the topics for today within the comments. And as you're coming in, let me know how you're doing, how you feeling, and what's the word. Because we're back with it on another Wednesday. Keeping it moving. Hopefully all is well with you. And if it isn't, I'm sending you much love, much success, much strength, and good times. So take it and apply it where needed. But as you're doing that, shout out to all those who will be here, watch this now as well as later, whether on Instagram or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to your boy at A.D.V.I.S Speaks, because again, there's going to be more content like this on that channel and other different various things. So please subscribe, like, comment, share, do all those wonderful things, as we're also trying to reach 1,000 subscribers and beyond. So thank you, appreciate the support, and that's what we're doing. So for today's episode, the topics we're going to be going over first, as we usually do, we're going to talk about current events, what's going on in the news. There's been a lot happening and going on in the news, so we got a lot to talk about. We're not going to speak on everything, but we'll speak about bits on there. So if you have any news reports or thoughts you want to share, please throw them down in the comments and we'll get to those as well. Second, we're going to be talking about debt, because again, it is very applicable to now and what's happening. So we're going to talk about debt. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how sustainable is a 9-to-5, and of course is a job. So how sustainable is a job? And we'll talk about that. So those are going to be the topics for tonight. If y'all have any other topics that you want to think of or have for other episodes in the future, please leave them down in the comments as well. And I'll take note, and who knows, they'll pop up in future episodes. But yes. So as that's happening, throwing some things up and getting it ready. So welcome. We are here. And all signs, my perspective is all mine. I'm just trying to turn these tables so I see all sides in the DJ. Shouts out to the brother Sabu, aka Sabu Smooth. It's already been a year that we released Welcome to the Booth. Just want to shout that out there. So shouts out to the brother Sabu. Appreciate him. And we in here. I see my boys up in here too. What's good? Sincerely Notes. I see you. Hope all is well with you, my G. Right. Now let's get into this. Do the show song, and we get into everything again. Ready? Let's get it. Again, if you don't know the song, the instrumental to this song, you'll get it, you'll sing along, hopefully. If not, it's all good. But sooner or later, I won't be singing as much. But here we go. What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? What's the word, y'all? What's the word? Tell them like, what's the word? What's the word? What you heard? We gotta know, yeah, what's the word? Once again, y'all, it's your brother A.D.V.I.S here with another episode of What's the Word Wednesday, Season 3, Episode 12. And we're back again, sharing what we got, building the community, speaking on what we need to speak on. So shouts out to all y'all that's here, as well as shouts out to the sister and family, Alien Space Queen Chris in the building. Good to see you here. Hope all is well with you, as well as what's the word. And again, shout outs to y'all that are here, as well as those who'll be watching this later, whether on Instagram or YouTube. The whole spillings in the beginning. I'm not going to do it again, but thank y'all. Now, when it comes to this episode, the topics that we're talking about, we'll be getting into. First, We're going to talk about current events. We're going to talk about what's going on in the news. So that's going to happen for about 20-30 minutes. So if you want to fast forward another 30 minutes, you can, as well as if you want to just stay and listen to all of the news. Appreciate you. Second, we're going to get into talking about debt. And that can range wherever we want to talk about debt, but very applicable to now. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how sustainable is a 9-to-5, meaning job. And we'll get in, speak on it. How sustainable? Does it work? Does it not work? We'll see what happens. Again, shouts out to the brother Sincerely Notes the Truth, aka Read Notes. What's good, my G? What's the word? But with that being said, let's go ahead and let's get into these current events. Right. So, again, if y'all have any news reports or good news that you just want to share, you please throw them down in the comments and we'll get to them and share them out. So, appreciate y'all being up in here. But if you got something, again, share with the community. Right. So, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 news reports I'm going to speak on. There's so many other things that happen. I'm not going to speak on the Roe versus Wade, as well as there's a number of other different shootings that happen and other things that I saw. If you want to learn about some of that stuff, go check out your local news reports. Go to NBC, go to CNN, go to NPR, all the places you can look this stuff up. But I'm going to get on a few things that did catch my eye while I was looking through the news. So, first thing I got. First news report comes from NBC News, and the headline reads, heads of FBI and MI5 issue strong warning about threat to the West from China. So here we go again with some more talk and situations about what's going on with China and the threat coming from China. And as we usually do, 3 paragraphs and we're out. Read the rest of the article. So here we go. Article reads, speaking along his British counterpart in London, FBI Director Christopher Wray issued his starkest warning yet about the national security threat to the West from China. Even as intelligence officials in Washington released a report about Beijing's effort to influence state and local politics in the U.S. Again, we have Russia trying to invade and coerce and do issues and dealings with rigging elections. Now we have China doing the same thing, at least from this report from the FBI, the Federal Bureau Investigations Agency. I may be saying it completely wrong, but hey, that's what I think about when we think of that particular acronym. But yes, y'all. Next thing. In its first ever joint appearance Wednesday, the director of Britain's MI5, which is the UK's domestic intelligence agency, so it's their FBI, Wray raised the possibility that China might be inching closer to invading Taiwan, which is another territory, or at least where the U.S. has their military power there as well too, or again, NATO, all that situation. Noting that Beijing has been taking steps to shield its economy from sanctions that would come after such a move. So watching what's happening with the whole Russia-Ukraine situation, how Russia got sanctions, China is preparing themselves just in case for that. Again, these are speculations, at least that's being noted by the FBI and the MI5. So that's what's happening there. Last one, and we out. MI5 Director General Ken McCallum said the appearance of his agency's headquarters was the first time FBI and MI5 leaders have held a public event together. He echoed a point Wray and the U.S. politicians from both parties have been making in recent years, that a long-standing hope about China's evolution had been dashed by its behaviors under President Xi Jinping. If I'm saying that correct, it is there. But that's all I'm going to say for this article. Again, if you want to read more about it, this article is found at NBC News, and the headline reads, Heads of FBI and MI5 issue strong warning about threat to the West from China. So that's what's going on with that. It caught my eye because, again, I kept seeing a lot of stuff about China in the past while on top of what was happening with Russia. So I was like, it just caught my eye again. All right. Second one. And I read through it a little bit. And it's getting a little controversial when it comes to unions and what teachers unions and other work unions really hold when it comes to power and things of that sort. Basie Bandy, good to see you up in here. What's the word? Welcome to What's the Word Wednesdays. Thank you for coming through. If you have anything that you like to share when it comes to news and stuff, please put it down in the comments. More than welcome. Appreciate you being in here. But to the point, this is the next article. Comes from Fox News. I know, Fox News. And the headline reads, National Education Association Teachers Union proposes resolution to change mother to birthing parent. And this is, again, for the education around the globe, to change mother to birthing parent. But let's see what it's talking about. So, 3 paragraphs and we're out. Headline reads, the National Education Association proposed a resolution that would change the word mother in contracts to birthing parent for the purpose of being inclusive to the LGBTQIA plus community. The resolution will be voted on Wednesday, which is today, by the Representative Assembly, the RA, comprised of 6,000 educators in Chicago as well as virtually. NEA's resolution represents the teachers' union's opinions and beliefs. It was unclear whether the resolution passed. Fox News Digital reached out to the NEA for comment and asked whether the resolution passed, but did not immediately receive a response. So we didn't know what was going on. Using this contract language, members need not worry about how a board of education / solicitors define maternity leave, mother, and or father. The language is an inclusive reflection of how the LGBTQIA plus members build families, the proposed resolution said. These resolutions are known as new business terms, or new business items, not terms, but items, MBI, are proposed by delegates. It takes 50 delegate sponsors to bring the MBI to the RA, which is the Representative Assembly, floor for debate and then to a vote, according to Education Week. So there's more, again, in this article, different titles that's here to watch, and people's responses to changes and switches when it comes to the union. But again, share your thoughts, how you feel about proposed ideas to change a lot of different verbiage, whether if it's mother to birthing parent, all different things around that. For me personally, it's going to make a lot of things more confusing, but I see the moves that they're making when it comes to this. It's make sure that all parties can reach some type of conclusion to this. Ultimately, we're going back and forth with apples, oranges, all this stuff. But again, you make your own thoughts, make your own decisions. But that was this article. Again, if you want to read more, Fox News, and the headline reads, National Education Association Teachers Union proposes resolution to change mother to birthing parent. And moving on to the next one. Yeah, I'm going to put this one, going to be the last one we talk about. So, got 2 FDA stuff I want to talk about. But yeah, let's see what you got. Said birthing parent, interesting. Mothers give birth, last time I checked. Again, we're in times where a lot of things are being questioned for the better and some really for the worse. But again, it's starting to take we're taking a toll on all of these different changes without really assessing what works and what doesn't. So, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. What's going on, Sue? What's the word? It's been a while. We need to check in, fam. Good to see you in here, though. Let me know how you doing, how you feeling. Come on. All right. Next article I got for y'all comes from CBS Denver. And this article having to do with the FDA. The article reads, the title reads, FDA looks to approve updated booster for variants. So for those who haven't gotten to keep up with it, what's going on, so there's been use of a variant or at least a different vaccine that will be able to basically be able to attack, or I should say not attack, but cover you from two different variants at the same time. It's a bivariant vaccine, but let's read a little bit more into it. I'm over here talking, but let's go ahead, jump into the article. Article reads, the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19 has evolved. Surges around the country are attributed to variants like Omicron. The FDA is close to authorizing an updated booster shot that targets the highly transmissible strain. In a statement, the FDA wrote, an overwhelming majority of advisory committee voted in favor of including a SARS-CoV-2 Omicron component to COVID-19 vaccines that would be used for boosters in the U.S. beginning in fall 2022. So we'll see around, they're trying to get it fall 2022. It's usually around end of August, September, October, all in those areas, November. So we'll see if that gets to where it needs to. Second thing, the CDC recommends a second booster of either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine at least 4 months after the first booster for people 50 years and older and those who are immune compromised. So we're doing a lot, again, with the boosting of those immune compromised as well as the 50 years and older, which is making me think the first booster shot. So are we still stuck on the third, or are we on the fourth? When they just said it was a fourth, but then now they're making one that will also have one that would work on the original COVID-19, which was the Alpha variant and also Omicron variant. So how many boosters are we taking? Little confusing to keep up with, but yeah. That's what I'm going to do for this article. If you want to read more into this article and learn about the other booster that they're making that have to attach both or two different variants of COVID, article comes from CBS Denver and headline reads, FDA looks to approve updated booster for variants. But yes, it said, I'm so over this time period. Aren't we all? Well, number of us are, but we're finding ways to get around and do what we need with it. But yeah, definitely have to catch up. But I've been well. Hope all is well with you and your infam. We will definitely tap in to really get that going. But yes, now on to the next thing with the FDA, which is, I've read the article and it still confused me, but I'm going to be able to read the whole thing because it's a short article. But this article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, FDA temporarily suspends order banning Juul cigarettes. So, weeks ago, I did speak about how there was a rise in smoking in this, for lack of a better term, teen smoking from Juuls, basically vaping. And the FDA had put a temporary block on Juul being able to sell their e-cigarettes. But now it seems that there's been an order that suspended that block. But let's get into it and we'll see what more they got to say about it. This time I'll read the whole thing. Article reads, the FDA issued an administrative stay Tuesday on the order it issued last month for vaping company Juul to pull its electronic cigarettes from the market. The agency said on Twitter that the stay temporarily suspends the marketing denial order while it conducts further review, but does not rescind it. You get that? Again, read that. It says it temporarily suspends the marketing denial order while it conducts further review, but it does not rescind it. So it doesn't send it back, but it's stopping it in the moment of time to review it, but it's still there. Bit confusing. The FDA issued the initial order banning Juul sales on June 23rd. And shouts out to everyone that's up in here. Pasha two times, as well as Kundan, good to see you in here. What's the word? We are back in here. Again, a day later, a federal appeals court temporarily blocked the government ban. So again, they went back and forth with it. The initial FDA action was a part of a sweeping effort by the agency to bring specific scientific scrutiny to the multi-billion-dollar vaping industry after years of regulatory delays. To stay on the market, companies must show that their e-cigarettes benefit public health. One more time. To stay on the market, companies must show that their e-cigarettes benefit public health. In practice, that means proving that the adult smokers who use them are likely to quit or reduce their smoking, while teens are unlikely to get hooked on them. Too late for all of that. I don't know how they're going to prove that, but yeah, when you think of smoking, e-cigarettes, and health, don't mix to me, but okay. The FDA originally said Juul's application left regulators with significant questions and didn't include enough information to evaluate any potential health risk. Juul said that it submitted enough information and data to address all issues raised. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit granted Juul's request for a hold while the court reviews the case. On Tuesday, the FDA said that it determined there are scientific issues unique to the Juul application that warrant additional review. Still, it said the stay and the review do not constitute authorization to market, sell, or ship Juul products. So they're still on a stay figuring out whether or not they're going to ship or have products, all in that particular case. So we'll see what happens. But ultimately, again, e-cigarettes, health, do those things mix and match? Y'all let me know. But again, if you want to look at the article yourself, article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, FDA temporarily suspends order banning Juul cigarettes, the e-cigarette company. All right, on to the next one. And I got 2 more for y'all. All right, well, got 3 more, but I'm going to try to make it as quick as I can. We'll do what we can with it. But appreciate y'all being up in here. Let's see what y'all got. Says so much news since your long break time, especially Supreme Court landmark decisions, especially overturning Roe v. Wade, but also EPA, B.I.V.S., NY gun laws, and school prayer. Yeah, there's been a lot, but there's so much that I can talk about in Roe v. Wade. I'm talking about that on Sunday for another podcast, so I don't want to speak on it here. If y'all want to speak on it, y'all can speak on it, but I personally am just going to wait until that Sunday to have my thoughts on it, because there's a lot. I'll say that all of this, in general, all this news, take note of it, but know where some of it is being used as distractions. I say it a lot because it happens. We get so caught up in all this stuff happening, like it was just another shooting that just happened, which I'm going to be speaking on too in a bit, but a lot of this stuff is being used as distractions. You have to be careful to not dig yourself deep into it and figure out where does all of this plug into the ultimate overall agenda in play. That's really what you got to look at this stuff. And when you read the news, not only what's being given to you, what words are being used, and what does it ultimately mean, or where does it point to in the ultimate scheme of things? Because there's always something like that. But yeah, next article, I'm just going to read the article. I'm going to read the headline, and if you want to go check it out for yourself, you can definitely go check it out for yourself. But I found it interesting, so I just wanted to say it. So this article comes from BGR. I don't know specifically what that is, because I get it from MSN. But BGR, and the headline reads, scientists found a massive new hole in the ozone layer that could affect 50% of the population. So, this whole setup with that. Again, scientists found a massive new hole in the ozone layer that could affect 50% of the population. Again, I could read into it, but I'm going to save it for myself to look into it later. So if you want to check it out, again, it's from BGR. It's just the place is called BGR, and you can Google and do all of that to figure this out. But I'm going to say this one for myself, because I didn't get to read all of these. All right. The next one I got for y'all is speaking about it. I'm only going to read 3 paragraphs and we're out. Again, yeah, political agenda season, always. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. The season is always ongoing, whether if it's for your votes, whether if it's for to change laws, whether if it's to make you scared, fearful. It's all around. It's every season. It's political agenda season. Every season. And if you want to get mad at me, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the different places, you need to go check all of these other websites that y'all be having, yo, NBC's, yo, CNN, and all of them, and get on them, because I'm just reporting on what they're giving. That's how that go. So yeah, don't get on me. Right. Next article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, "The Highland Park suspect breaks the mold on violent extremists." And this has been almost about 2 months or a month and a half where I last spoke about the other deadly shooting that happened, not the one that happened in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas. There's one that happened in Buffalo. There's so many, but I remember I talked about the number in particular. So this is probably almost close to about 240 shootings. There is about like, I don't want to quote me, so don't quote me on this. It was roughly around maybe 5 to about 7, or 4 to 7 shootings, all on July 4th in all different places. One being in Cali, California, and I think it's Sacramento. Another one, again, happened in Highland Park, Illinois. There's a few places that a lot of these shootings were happening on July 4th, just in July 4th. But we're going to talk about this one. Again, the Highland Park suspect breaks the mold on violent extremists. So here we go. Article reads, moments after law enforcement authorities disclosed the name of a person of interest in the deadly shooting at a July 4th parade in Highland Park, Illinois, extremist researchers, journalists, and some members of the public rushed online. They discovered an extensive trail of digital activity believed to be linked to Robert Bobby Crimo III, now the named suspect in the mass shooting. They already got it. But sifting through the trove of memes, photos, music, rap videos, and more, extremist experts agree there is no clear political or ideological motivation for this. Interesting. Instead, many experts on extremism and technology say that the suspect's activity fits with a still emerging profile of mass shooter. Rather than falling neatly into categories familiar to law enforcement in the public, such as white supremacists, radical Islamics, or anti-government militants, it requires an understanding of dark online subcultures that overlap and feed into each other in ways that glorify violence and foster nihilism. Alarmingly, these experts say that online milieus have been tied to an increasing number of mass shootings over time. You can talk about it. Mass shooter culture. Researchers who comb through Crimo's digital footprint say that the content is strikingly unoriginal. So they're finding some consistencies, but at the same time, still there's not too many patterns that are exactly the same. But yeah. So again, if you want to read more about the article, learn about what's happening, this article comes from NPR, and the headline reads, "The Highland Park suspect breaks the mold on violent extremists." And shouts out to everybody that's up in here too, man. Good to see my brother in here, man. Rubber Ducky Russ in the building. One of the best to do it. What's good, my G? Peace and love. What's the word? But let me see what y'all got before we finish it. So, it has been hotter than usual here in GA. Heat index was 111. My goodness. Man, you need about 20 fans to keep you cool, unless you got an AC. But man, there's another one too now. It's too many to keep up now. It is too much to keep up. It is. Now let's see. Boom. I have the last one for us, and then we're gonna move on to the next as it goes. But let me see the comments. In reality, the A.D.V.I.S. Supreme Court decision is as important as overturning Roe versus Wade. They go hand in hand, but it's not getting as much coverage. The A.D.V.I.S. Supreme Court decision, I need to look back into that as well too. So I'll check on that too. I'm not too informed on. I seen the name, but again, there's a lot of news that I sift through. So if it really doesn't catch me, I really don't look into it. But if other stuff, it just pops up, so it's just there, and I'm going to see it. But yeah, if you know a little bit more, you can let me know on that. And yeah, the Roe versus Wade, there's a lot to it. Again, like I said, I'm gonna speak on that. Not on the A.D.V.I.S. podcast. I'm not speaking on the A.D.V.I.S. podcast. This is gonna be on Sundays with the Random Thoughts podcast, Random Thoughts Talk series, which we do that on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. So that's going to be on YouTube this upcoming Sunday. So if you want to tune in and hear other people's thoughts and perspectives on the overturn in the decision, come through. 12 p.m. our time for PST, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, just let us know. All right, last one I got for y'all, because it's going to tie into the next topic we're going to speak on. And this article comes from New York Times, and the headline reads, Fed, this is the Federal Reserve, moves towards another big rate increase as inflation lingers. People been talking about inflation, been talking about money moving up and down. We're in a recession. The economy's been tanking, etc., etc. Now the Fed is moving towards another big rate increase as inflation lingers. And here in Cali, they were doing the whole gas tax. They was trying to drop it, but now it's like the gas tax. It's ridiculous. But 3 paragraphs and we're out. Article reads, the Federal Reserve determined to choke off rapid inflation before it became a permanent feature of the American economy is steering towards another 3/4 point interest rate increase later this month, even as the economy shows early signs of slowing and the recession fear mounts. Economic data suggests that the U.S. could be headed for a rough road. Oh, see all what's going on. Consumer confidence has plummeted. The economy could post 2 straight quarters of negative growth. New factory orders have been sagged, and oil and gas commodity prices have dipped sharply lower this week as investors fear an impending downturn. Yes, and especially for myself, I work in the factories. There have been less work because of a lot of this is just lagging, as well as they're talking about gas going down. I see it still fluctuating, but that's what's happening in the mind of these people. But that weakening is likely to dissuade central bankers. Some degree of economic slowdown would be welcome news for the Fed, which is actively trying to cool the economy, and a commitment to restoring price stability could keep officials on an aggressive policy path. So, again, I'm going to leave it at that. If you want to check more of this article, the article comes from the New York Times, and the headline reads, Fed moves towards another big rate increase as inflation lingers. So, I want to speak about that because, again, going to go into the next topic, it will make sense of why we're going to speak on that, which is debt. But before I do that, let me check these comments one more time, and we'll continue pushing on. It's narrowing the scope of the A.D.V.I.S. versus 6 unknown name agents to the point of it being useless. It's not overturning it exactly, but almost. Got you. GD. Man, it's already rough. Yes. Basically, now Border Patrol agents can arrest and seize property without a warrant within 100 miles of border airports and coastlines without being sued because I was gonna say Scout, but Shoutout said only Congress can sue now. Rights, left and right. Now, I'm with learning more about that, for sure. But thank you for sharing that. If y'all have any other news, please throw it down in the comments. And any good news, too, y'all can throw it down in the comments. Because I know we mix the news and all of it, you can say, very troubling news. But let's balance it with some good news as well. And hopefully all is well with y'all. But before we get into the next topic, which we're going to talk about debt, of course, I'll make my disclaimer. Again, this is an open forum when it comes to the community coming in and speaking on topics. If you like to share your perspectives and come on screen with me, just know that you're putting away your rights, because this will be on Instagram as well as on YouTube. So if you're not comfortable with your face being seen or being on here, you can stay within the comments and speak your points from the comments in there. If not, you're more than welcome to come on and share with me, because I appreciate points in times like this. So please do. But with that, the disclaimer out the way, let's go ahead. We're going to jump into the next topic, which the next topic we're going to talk about is debt. Yeah, everybody loves debt, right? Nah, I'm just playing. I'm being goofy. But we're going to speak on debt because, again, coming from that article just talked about now, the whole idea of a recession and inflation makes people worry and start thinking about not only the debts that they've accumulated, whether it's credit card debt, whether it's student loans, whether it's just personal loans or any type of debt. It makes it more and more worrisome when there's a recession, especially if your job is impacted. Again, the next topic pairs into that too. If your job's impacted, and it all plays off of, again, the U.S. economy and how well it's doing. If it's thriving, if it's prospering, because again, this is all it has to do with a lot of consumerism, because there's capitalism for things to work around with the money. But we're going to speak in depth about debt a little bit. We're not going to get too crazy about it, but again, we're going to speak on it. For some folks, if you're not too sure, I mean, I already spoke on some ideas of what debt may be, but basically, when you think of debt, it's owing some type of money, owing some type of situation monetarily, mostly, whether you are indebted to somebody or you just, again, you have a debt of money that is accumulated that you have to pay for. But in terms of, at least in the U.S., if anybody else from a different country in a different place has their own perspective on that, please share it, whether if it's now or later. Please put down your perspective on how y'all either dealing with debt or y'all are in a thriving economy. Shouts out to the brother Mutt. I see you in here, my G. Peace and love. What's the word? Good to see you in here. Please share it. Put it down. Because right now in the U.S. specifically, so the United States of America, we are going up and down through it. People are feeling the weight and the pressure of the economy dropping, inflation. They just recently also finally increased the minimum wage to $15, at least in California, which still doesn't equal out to inflation. And it just makes it more and more difficult for people to make a means to survive. Because again, consumerism, capitalism, intertwined, supply and demand, just to meet ends meet, doesn't work. Especially if you're living in California. California is ridiculously high. If you're also in Atlanta, Georgia, ridiculously high. New York, a lot of these key places where just being able to live, you have to make over $100,000 or more just to say that you're comfortable. But it's still possible, but it gets harder and harder. So speaking on that, A few things I want to speak about debt. I do some of the who, what, when, where, hows, and whys, and what I ultimately think of debt, and pros or cons to having debt, how to use debt, and whether or not we can ever get out of debt in particular, or any type of debt that we accrue. So when I'm speaking on debt, who does debt really impact? Debt not only impacts the economy, or it impacts state by state, but it impacts, of course, on an individual level. What we can end up sharing, what we can end up being able to receive and get. What's going on, Wicked Jasmine? Peace and love. What's the word? Good to see you in here, family. Good to see you up in here. But debt also impacts your long-term goals. It impacts your short-term goals, and it impacts your plans on whether you're going to either, for some folks, whether if they're going to have and start families, whether they're going to try to move out of state, move to a different city. Having funding in any particular way, debt has a major impact and play on how you're going to come up with your plans. Now, why do we have debt? Why is there such thing of debt? For folks who don't know much about the Federal Reserve and about how money, the U.S. monetary is used in particular. Goofy, oh my goodness. You let's go and do due diligence. There's definitely YouTube videos and other places you can speak on. You can look up the Federal Reserve and about money, and how basically as time has progressed and we switched from not only a bartering system, but then to an IOU, a monetary system, and then from the Federal Reserve having its way, and now the centralized banks having the powers that be with stuff and printing off money, debt has become a thing, because the IOUs have turned into what we will know as the money that we have. And for people to make money, there always has to be a principal interest. So for me, the idea of debt equals money. So when you have money, you have debt, because that's basically what money is. The only way for you to pay yourself out of debt in particular, and for the U.S., that's almost an impossibility of the way that it's been created, is that there has to be a way for you to have more money to pay back that's more than how much money is being circulated at a time. So for example, if you have the Federal Reserve and them print off $1 million, there's also always going to be an interest. There's always those interest rates. There's always going to be interest. For you to make more money, there has to be some interest on top of that. So had that $1 million, say the interest on top of that $1 million is $25,000. But there's only $1 million in circulation. So how are you going to pay off that $25,000 if there's only $1 million in circulation? Guess what? You're going to have to print off more money, just enough so that you can pay off that $25,000. But when you do that, you also print off more money that gives into more interest. So that means now the interest that you have to pay for that $25,000, you also have to pay off for the principal interest of the other $25,000 or whatever thousand that you take out. So ultimately, there's going to get to a point where there's always going to be debt in circulation. There's going to be a ceiling of that debt there, and it's always going to be continuing happening and growing, because ultimately that's what money and then this laws and system creates is going to be debt. That's the only way for money to be made as well too, is that someone has to be indebted. Capitalism, I have to capitalize off of somebody else so that I can be winning. That's why there was a whole such thing as Occupy Wall Street way back when you're saying that we're the 99% and the 1%. The transfers of wealth have been ridiculous since then. It's very, 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 very one-sided when it comes to the transfer of wealth, whether if it's been through the pharmaceutical companies, the gasoline industry, as well as all other different types of industries taking and using money from the common folks, and all the top of 1% having majority of the wealth. So that, again, my whole spiel there is with debt, is that it has a huge impact on how you're able to plan your stuff out. And that ultimately, for me, money is debt, because you're always got to be paying stuff off. When you get things and you have money, you work for something, you're going to have to be paying it off. That's debt, regardless. There's a such thing of being debt free individually, but the states wise, we're always going to have debt. It's just how it goes. We'll always end up increasing the debt ceiling, and when more money is printed, that's when a lot of stuff happens, like inflation and increasing of just the situation with falling and rising rapids of recessions. Is because of such things as debt and paying out to other people that you're also indebted to. The U.S. is not only indebted to itself, it's indebted to other different countries, whether that's China, whether that's Europe. There's or continent. That's a continent, but you get what I mean. They're indebted in those particular ways to a point where it's always going to be that debt. And shouts out to Don. Good to see you up in here, brother. What's the word? Thank you for coming through. Right now, we're talking about debt. It might be a little too much for folks to even want to be thinking about some debt, especially during this time of what's happening. But it's important that we speak on it, because ultimately it's impacting the way that we all live, regardless. Whether if, again, you have student loan debt, whether if you have personal debt, whether you have car loans, any type of different loans, that type of debt is impacting you. And now, I know I talked about who, already know what when it came to the debt with the whole Federal Reserve and other things of that sort. You can go look up the whole setup of the Federal Reserve and money, and how money is really transferred and used. But another thing about debt, on the flip side, because I've been talking about a lot of the cons when it comes to debt. On the flip side, when it comes to investing and using money to leverage yourself to create more money, that's where debt can be used and played. And again, that's with loans and stuff of that sort. But that's more in the business mindset, as well as if you are investing, whether if that's the stock market, cryptocurrencies, or in different companies and businesses. You can leverage your debt to help build a business that ultimately you can pay back off that debt with the money that you use and accumulate through not only tax exemptions, returns, all those different things. That's when you can say debt is a positive use, or positive use of debt. But overall, debt just change you to the situations and what's going on and what's happening, and it makes it harder and harder for yourself to get up out of that. Whether if you have credit card debt as well too, and bring up credit card debt, because that is a big play when it comes to folks and how they, again, make and have our earnings in their life is credit card debt. And with credit card debt, that happens very quickly for folks, especially if you don't have the know-how on how to use a credit card and what you're really going to need the credit card for. Because a lot of credit card companies, and it did happen to me, luckily I knew how to use a credit card. I had people in my circle that gave me some type of financial literacy, which will help you figure out and know how to properly use debt again. But in college, there's a lot of companies, a lot of banks that will come up to the universities and be ready to open up a bank account for you, get you a credit card, get a lot of this stuff and things going, put you under a college account, and provide you with all these different accommodations as well as perks if you open up an account and have a credit card doing this stuff today. Knowing that, again, you have these college students, especially if you're coming from high school and you've had a structured way of how you would do your classes, go to school, etc., etc. And then you get to college, and now you have a lot more freedom and a lot more time around how you schedule things. It makes it harder and harder to be not only structured, but disciplined to do stuff. So you can get caught up in getting a credit card fucking get that one, I swipe for this one, swipe for that one, and before you know it, if you're not keeping up with your finances, you find yourself again drowning in credit card debt and having to pay off a credit card that again might have a very high interest. So even if you pay off $100 on a credit card, you still owe maybe $500+ on there, and you pay it on time, there's always going to be an interest increase on top of that if you pay, even though you pay it on time. So initially you owe $500, maybe $1,000. If you have to pay that off and you're doing it monthly for it takes a whole year to pay off, you may be paying another maybe $200 in that whole process that you could have used if you had the money, just pay it off completely and build your credit. Which again, another thing for debt, building credit, all this different stuff. I'm not trying to get into a whole financial literacy setup of debt and how that all accumulates, but ultimately, reason why debt is such a huge thing again is because of how much of an impact it has on the overall system and functioning around the economy. And when the economy is doing bad, that means the U.S., the people, all that's there are also doing bad. Which, even if it's in a thriving economy, there's always still going to be, people that are always there struggling. But ultimately, when it's doing bad, it's doing bad. When it's doing good, it's not doing as bad as when it was doing bad when it was bad. I know it's a terrible explanation, but if you get my gist, ultimately it has a huge impact on how things are ran and set. I wouldn't be surprised if later on this year, which usually around towards October, maybe wrong, but towards October, when the House, Congress, the Senate all have to go back and look through the budget the next year. Hopefully there's not another government shutdown where they're going to have to go through and just do the same thing with figuring out how much money is being allocated, figure it out, all of those particular things. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again, just due to all the stuff that's going on right now. A lot of our money and a lot of our aid is not staying in state. It is going out to, again, Ukraine. It's going out to various different other countries to help support with development in different places. And it's not brought back here. That's why you haven't heard much talk about any more stimulus, especially during this time, because of the fact that we put ourselves in this hole, as well as we increased budgets for other things and decreased budgets for other different places. Like, one thing I can think of that's been an increased budget has been the military budget has increased. I know it was at first it was like 600 billion. Now I think they went up to almost 7, if not 800 billion for military. In a certain way, justifiable, but what are we really getting into? And that's where people talk about taxes, figuring out where's my money really going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All those different stuff. But again, moving back to debt, it all plays a role of how people will be able to make a living, be able to prosper, as well as thrive. And debt can tie you. Debt can free you. But ultimately, money is debt. And the more money that you have, Biggie said it, more money, more problems, more debt can happen and come to you. But yeah, that's a lot that I really have there when it comes to debt and how that impacts people's jobs, which we'll get to in the next topic in a bit. How that impacts people's jobs. Especially, I would say in my particular case right now, I work in a factory. So how the recession, inflation, and how debt is affecting my particular position and things at the workhouse or the warehouse, it has stopped production, and a lot of the boxes, the containers, and the trailers that we get that come in and out on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, etc., has fluctuated so much to a point that they've had to call less and less of workers to work, including myself, and also lay them off certain days, so you just basically be on call whether or not if there's enough for work or not. And this past month, it's been atrocious and hearing and talking with a lot of the supervisors as well as coworkers, there's so much backup, not only here in California from Port of Los Angeles, but also from the companies not being able to sell what's in their stores and get them off the shelves, so then they can make room for more of these products to be done. And again, part of that is people are struggling. They don't have money in this point in time with economy to be able to keep up and be able to help, again, the consumerism, helping that to go around, the supply and the demand. When there's so much supply, there's a low demand for it. And especially when there's not enough money, the demand and the supply is going to be super high, and there's not enough money to buy the supply, then basically demand becomes super low. So it makes it harder and harder for more supplies to come in. So in my particular case, that's why it's been difficult, especially for warehouse workers all around where I'm at, especially in Southern California. It's been very difficult because of the fact that there's slowdowns, there's not enough people buying things, there's not enough money to port, etc., etc. So that plays into that because of the fact that, again, when people don't have money, have ways to be able to spend or be able to make enough money to live, to pay off either their house, the car, and then pay off the loans and all these different stuff just to get by, how are they going to go out and want to go buy, a refrigerator if they don't need a refrigerator, or go out and buy a large screen TV, do Labor Day sales and all these different things? People don't have the money for that. There's statistics on it too, for people, almost roughly like 60 to 70% of people have less than $1,000, at least in the U.S. This is the U.S. have less than $1,000 in emergency money in savings, less than that, and roughly around 50-60% are living check to check, and it might be even higher with a lot of this going on. I wouldn't be surprised if that statistic went up even more. But just over broke a job, you're just barely making it check by check. So when stuff like this happens, you in debt, the economy, the recession makes it harder and harder for people to live and suffice. Ain't nobody gonna go out there and start splurging on stuff that they know they can't pay for. And if they do, again, you're accruing more and more and more debt that affects your credit, which then the credit affects other different possibilities for you to go and do other different things with it. So it's a whole whirlwind of things. But ultimately, debt impacts very heavily. It can be used strategically, but most of the time, debt plays a heavy role of making it harder for people to have plans to what they want to do and how they can go about achieving their goals. So just be mindful of when stuff like this is happening around you, or just in general in the world, and find ways to save. If you're not on financial literacy, you don't know much about finances and money, you got to get acquainted with it. You got to figure it out, because again, you're in a system that uses it, that flourish off of it. So you got to learn. You got to learn some way, shape, and form. But yeah, if y'all have anything, again, on debt you want to share it, whether it's out in a different country or you still out here in the U.S., you talk about your own experiences with it, please put it down in the comments. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for being in here and listening and sharing and being in here with me. But as we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move to the last topic, because again, I can ramble on and on about debt, but I'm not going to ramble on and on about it. We're going to talk about how sustainable is a 9-to-5. Now, as I usually do, like I said, I pair these topics together on purpose, because ultimately it all connects, not only now with the current events, but also debt to now how sustainable is a 9-to-5, how it all connects. But with talking about how sustainable is a 9-to-5, what is a 9-to-5? What is sustainable? What is sustain? 9-to-5 is a job. That's the is it colloquial, but the term that's said about a job is called a 9 to 5, because some people go in at 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., be a 8 to 4, a 7 to 3, whatever you want to end up naming it. But that is particularly what we mean by a job through the time. Now, sustainable. Now you think about at least to sustain something. Now, when we think about that, yes, I'm going to read the definition. Some people already know what sustain is or sustainable is, but I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to read it. Webster's Dictionary, and then we'll get into the talking about how sustainable 9 to 5 is, or how unsustainable it is, what you can do with it, why worry about it, and we'll get into that. But from Webster's Dictionary, sustain, because I use sustainable, but we use the word sustain in this particular case. And the first part of it is a verb. There's 8 different definitions, and I'll read off all those different definitions for sustain. The first one is to give support or relief to, sustain. The second one, to supply with sustenance, which is to nourish. So sustain, be able to sustain your health, nourish yourself. Another one, sustain, is to keep up, prolong. So you keep going. Fourth one, to support the weight of, to prop something up, to withstand, to sustain the pressure of some weight. Second one, to buoy up, which is buoyancy, sustained by hope, is the example. Sixth one, to bear up under, so to undergo, to sustain some blows, like what's going on, the economy again, trying to sustain itself in some way, shape, or form. The seventh one, to support as true, legal, or just. So to allow or admit as valid is to sustain something, to sustain a motion, or again, a perspective. And lastly, not again, but a perspective. And lastly, sustain, to support adequate proof, so to confirm. So how sustainable is a 9 to 5? Can we confirm that? Is it sustainable? Is it not sustainable? And another sustain too, in music, having to talk about the prolonged effect of holding a note and its resonance, of how long that it echoes in particular. That's a sustain as well. But now, when speaking about how sustainable a 9 to 5 is, we got to talk about what is the purpose of having a 9 to 5 in the first place. Why do we get jobs? Why do we need jobs? What's the necessity in that? And yes, it does sound, of course, redundant to ask, or be like, well, duh, because you gotta live. I know, but again, we gotta ask the question of like, why? Really, why do we necessarily need to work a 9 to 5? Why do we need to work a job? Why? Where do we set ourselves up to have to work a 9 to 5 to be able to survive and to suffice for ourselves? Well, again, like I already said, to have that 9 to 5 and for it to be sustainable, yes, you do it because of the fact that you have, again, things that you owe. There's debt. You live in a house. You live in an apartment. Maybe you might live in, I don't know. You live in a tent. I don't know. You live in an RV, wherever you may end up living. There's some type of place where, again, you're going to be paying some place to live somewhere. Even if you're just renting, you own, or you're staying with somebody, you're going to be paying something. So how are you able to make money? You got to give of your time or particular services or skills that you have, again, to acquire money to pay off those things or pay for these things for you to eat. Again, people do bartering, but in this particular case in time, for regular 9 to 5s and jobs in particular, it's the pay of your time and work for whatever services that you provide. Now, when you think of it being sustainable, for how long can this 9 to 5 help you survive? For some folks, depending on the job and the work that they're in, it's more secure than other jobs. But at that same token, especially if there's, in this particular case, teachers in other different places, they have what's called tenure and all of that. Y'all probably know about tenure. But in other places where it's job performance is crucial and you dip below the job performance, your job is at risk. So you having just one job to pay for all of your stuff, all the necessities in life, and be able to supply things becomes harder and harder and becomes difficult for you to do, especially if you lose a job. Especially during times where there are recessions, there's inflation, and there's debt circling around. That's going to happen, and that's what's going to be there. So with jobs in that particular case and form, it makes it hard for a 9-to-5 to be sustainable, because if you're not on the job force and you're not sustaining, again, your job input or output and performance. What's going on, John? Good to see you up in here, brother. What's the word? As well as bad times, good times. Peace and love to y'all. Welcome to What's the Word Wednesdays. We on the last topic right now. If y'all want to share whatever y'all got about the last topic, I appreciate y'all, which we're talking about how sustainable is a 9-to-5. I know a lot of us got 9-to-5. Some of us are lucky enough to have sectioned out of the way from having a 9-to-5. But again, y'all speak on it. Is a 9-to-5 sustainable? Can you really live off of just only having a job for the rest of your life? Y'all let me know, because I'm talking about it right now. But yeah, realistically, for places where you have a job performance and you have to stay up to code with things, you can lose your job at any point in time that you don't show your work. So in that particular sense, it's not sustainable. But in different places, whether if you're a teacher, whether if you're in a very niche type of company where after your years of either your tenure or you have priority over other people and folks, there's that possibility of it being a lot more sustainable, that you're able to still use that job to help you pay for, all the things that you have. I spoke on earlier about debt, being able to pay off house, be able to pay off car, your necessities, pay off bills, all these different things is more sustainable. But is it future proof? That's the other thing. When I think about, is a 9-to-5 sustainable, you got to think of future proof. And when I mean future proof, I'm talking about whatever job industry that you are in. Is it necessary for humans? Because again, we have technology, for humans to still be working there and being able to provide a service for that job. Can you be replaced by technology? And in some cases, you can be replaced, and other ones you cannot. So you have to be able to have a job again. That's future proof, if you can. But I'm gonna get into some more other options and stuff that we're doing. I'm just laying the groundwork, but let me see what y'all going. To be honest, one, a 9-to-5 job is not sustainable. I have 2 jobs, and that still isn't enough. Investments are key. I'm so glad y'all bringing this stuff up, because that's really where I'm about to go with a lot of this conversation and talk. Appreciate it. Yes, I came from a 9-to-5 that everybody too comfortable. It was union, and when it came to negotiating the next contract, everybody, and see how fast things get unpredictable. Exactly. And that's why, and I'm glad that John, as well as Bad Times, y'all brought this up. That's why it's important when we talk about having different plans and different means. If you watch Dave Chappelle, I always make fun of the joke too, of Wu-Tang Financial, and talking about you got to diversify your bonds and all of this stuff. But it's truthful. When we talk about being able to make it suffice for yourself, make multiple streams of income, because again, you never know when one stream of income will be very unpredictable and might be cut off. And in the same token, for an example, that means you're putting your eggs all in one basket, hoping that one basket stays together the whole particular time. But when that basket breaks and crumbles, all of your eggs, that means your job, means your bills, car, all these different stuff, home, all gets destroyed. You're not able to suffice it, go into debt, etc., foreclosure, all this other stuff, because you have your eggs in that one basket. So yes, it's very mindful that either you're investing your time into picking up a skill, which that's one thing I will say I am working towards having. There's a few that I have, but more so other ones that, again, are future proof, is having a skill-based approach when it comes to jobs. So having a skill that you can take anywhere in any type of different industry and use it, so where either not only you can be a contractor, you can create your own business around it and be able to suffice that particular way, while at the same time, if you're a creator, do other content like what I'm doing right now, YouTube, haul other different places, just to find different means of income. If you want to do the investment route and you start investing into the stock market, cryptocurrency, you do that too. Another set of investments. I mean, again, people are getting into, I say retail, not retail in particular, but investing in homes and stuff like that. I'm not thinking, the word is not coming to mind right now, but it's very funny that I'm trying to think about it. But that in particular, selling homes, flipping homes and things. So real estate, there we go. Real estate, investing in real estate. These are all different routes and means. Again, because you want to have cushions. Because you can think about it. Another example of thinking about having a 9-to-5 and just some type of sustainability. Nah, that one's gonna be terrible. Think of it as a padding. So say that you're sitting on a chair. It's your job. You've been working that for a very long time. The back is starting to come off. The seat is a lot less supportive. It feels just very hard. It's getting messed up. All of this particular things, and now you're starting to have either some back problems, other type of issues, things of that sort, and it's because you're relying on just that one cushion. Versus if you added in some more padding, got some more cushion, that whether it can be investments, whether that can end up being, if you sell courses online, whatever other hustle that you got, you want to call it, that helps to supplement, or it might overgrow your job. Now you're a little bit more comfortable than prior to before, because now you have a little bit more cushion, a little bit more safety and other stuff behind you. So the moral of the story with this is not only to use a 9-to-5 and have a 9-to-5 if possible, but use that 9-to-5 to help fuel other means, other multiple streams of income, so that ultimately, because of how unpredictable whatever job force you get into, labor, the economy, all of that, you have a plan ready and set to go, because of the fact that you never know when one stream will close. So can it be sustainable? Again, yes. But the question is, for how long? And what is your intention, again, for having the job? Besides, of course, to survive. Is it something that you are very passionate about? Is it something you see yourself doing for years? Is it future proof? All of those different things. But let me get into some of these comments. I like where y'all going. Appreciate that. Yeah. Wu-Tang for the children. You already know. Multiple streams is probably the best bet. I'm thinking it's very important. It is. Multiple streams of income are definitely the way to make it on top. Unfortunately, we need to use the 9-to-5s as a stepping stone to invest in those multiple streams of income. Exactly. You got to work jobs that you hate. I mean, where I'm working right now, I've already spoke about it earlier, but I mean, it's not necessarily something that I like in particular, but during this economy, during this time, it's what I could get. It's a choice. And ultimately, you got to work with what your choices that you got. So then again, you can use that to fuel other things. But some people, that 9-to-5 job might be what they love. And that's all fine and well. And if that's literally what they see themselves doing for the rest of their life, as long as that they can suffice for themselves and find a way and the means to continue to do what they love and be able to support their loved ones or whoever or just themselves, I'm all for it. But just know that life is unpredictable and you never know when that could be your last day, your first, whatever happens. Is just being able to have cushions to help yourself so that you can sustain the blow and be able to do that. So if you don't have multiple streams of income and you're only doing a 9 to 5 right now, this is a great time to start investing in yourself. Whether if that's to go back to school to learn a different trade, which honestly, that's one thing I said earlier that I really would have wanted to do is learn a trade, learn another skill that I can use to help market myself even more in different places. Because again, as much as you don't want to, or I should say, I don't want to evolve and be involved in, capitalism, etc., etc. It's just a means and a way of life. Money is a tool, and the way that you use it to help you supply yourself and help yourself to survive, you gotta go along with it. It's the game. You gotta find a way to play it. Hopefully, you can outplay the game. But again, using that 9 to 5 to help you find other multiple options to build on top of is going to go a long way. And if you can do that, in particular, amidst all the debt, you give yourself more break, as well as for some people, they get to have more time back in their life. That's what a lot of us are trying to really get back. We're trying to get more of our time back. Not saying that you can buy time, but the more that you're able to climb yourself out of the debt and out of all these expenses and things that you have, and be able to take more time back for yourself. That's why a lot of us too are making it. People want to get stuck in the American dream, having a house business, being able to go on vacation, do all these different things, and all of that sorts, not knowing really what it takes and the work behind all of that to get to that point. And knowing that, again, life is a roller coaster. You never know when, and you got to be able to go with the ebb and flow of what happens. You got to take all of this in consideration. You got to have a plan. As much as we can still play things by ear, it's always great to have a plan. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. All those P's, they help to make sure that even with uncertainty, you still have some idea and something to fall back on when planning things out. But let's keep it going. Boom. It said, I consider being a creative and making that another source of income. Yes, you got to be able to market it. Do what you got to do. And I see you be taking your photos, brother, and, sharing that off to people, throwing it here on Instagram and doing your stuff, man. Sure, I don't know if you do videos, anything of that sort, but shoot, get into that. Which, now that just reminded me what I was really trying to get into about skills-based versus knowledge-based when we get jobs. A lot of us get jobs. We don't have careers, but we get jobs that are more so knowledge-based. And the only thing with having a knowledge base when it comes to a job is that literally, yes, you have knowledge on how to do the job, but that knowledge doesn't necessarily transition or translate into skill. And most of the time, if you have a skill in a particular job, in a particular avenue, you have more leeway and more bargaining when it comes to whatever work you're doing. So yes, getting a degree in psychology, sociology, any of the health professions in, I can't think of the particular department name right now, human services. It's great, but if you don't have another skill on top of that, that's why a lot of people go into STEM. STEM being the science, technology, math, all of that stuff, engineering, math, is because, again, that's skills based. They can use that. You build websites. You can end up doing that on the side, charge people learn to build websites, learn how to build and create homes, all these other different things. You use the skills based, you can use and apply that anywhere. Knowledge base is cool. You have the knowledge to do that. But if you don't back it up with having a particular skill, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but not know how to do what you're doing. So I always remind myself to be mindful of that. So as far as that goes, no one should be spending on unnecessary things like going on trips or eating expensive dinners or buying expensive cars or clothes. that are just going to make it, yeah, there's going to make it more and more difficult. Exactly. Being able to, and I'm glad you brought that up. Being able to live within your means, not above your means. You can live a bit below your means, but again, within your means. So it's turned into like financial literacy on here, y'all. But again, it's very important to know how much money you make, how much money is being sent out and used for expenses, and how much you're pocketing and keeping to yourself. Just like how they're talking about, I keep bringing up the recession and things of that sort. They're talking about a quarter where they're going negative again. Most of the time you want to check out with your stuff. Do you have enough money to put into your savings every month? Do you have enough money to put to the side for entertainment for you? Maybe $100, $200 it is, so that you can pay for stuff. Do you have loans that you paid off? Are you free from other multiple debt and loans? These are all things to ask yourself and think about. Okay, then, well, I shouldn't be spending money. Shouldn't be spending $200 on a t-shirt when I can end up going to the thrift shop, or I can end up going to your nearest Ross, Marshalls, whatever, clothing store that you have, and buying a shirt for like $15 versus $200. You can use that other $185 to go get you some other things, groceries. In this particular case in Cali, gas, so you can get you from place to place, wherever you're going. It's just be reasonable of how you're using your money. A lot of us do want to stunt. We want to show off. We want to be able to show people that we can afford things and that we have some type of status because we have these things. But that also sends the wrong signals to people because of the fact that your priorities are not in line. But yes, I agree with you, John. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, for Make You Payments, Array. Man, there's so many people that came through and then left. Man, I appreciate y'all all coming through. Pushing P. So goofy. All those things are definitely doable to do once your money is straight. Yes. Peace, God. What's going on? Fred Wizard Hands. Oh, Fred. What? You changed your name, my G? Fred Word Wizard Hands. I'm so terrible right now. And shouts out to Crackbone. Peace and love to all y'all that's up in here. What's the word? Loving it. I know some people that have expensive cars but still live at home with their parents instead of focusing first on having a home of their own. Yes. They think once they get the car, boom, we good to go. No. Did you buy that straight up? Or do you have a car? Do you have car insurance? Not car insurance, but do you have, again, to pay on the car? Now you also have car insurance. If that's on top of that, you also have maintenance to do with the car. And in your particular case, if you want to trick out the car, do other things with it, that's other expenses that you want to add to the car. So literally, you have to be mindful when you're doing all your stuff. If you're going to buy your car straight up, or you're going to end up just having pulling out a loan and you're going to have to just finance it. You think about a lot of these things because, again, ultimately it's all going to accrue and it's all going to add up. And if you don't have what it is enough to add up to what that is there, people getting, like I was saying earlier, getting 2 jobs. Even 2 jobs is not sufficing. Literally people going 2.5 jobs. I used to work 2.5 jobs. That was not the business. I still don't agree on even doing 2.5 jobs. But I mean, when it calls for it, it calls for it. But ultimately, again, you really don't want to be spending your time in a place forever that literally you do 8 to 10. Some people might even do almost 14 hours of work, come home, eat, sleep, and then go and repeat the same thing over and over. You basically live at your job. Again, now going back to how sustainable is a 9 to 5, again, ultimately it's not. And we're starting to see that. It's especially since 2020, you've seen they've called it the Great Resignation, where people have been leaving their jobs, whether to be on unemployment, whether to fight against unions and systems so that they can create, again, more livable wages. Or it's just like, you know what? I'm tired of doing this job thing. You know what? I'm going to go on a whim and I'm going to create my own business. I'm going to start a YouTube. I'm going to start the TikTok, whatever, any means of having, again, a skill. If you're skills based, you can take yourself and go outside and do other different things. Because again, nowadays, bro, you get, there's so many different ways and hustles for you to create for yourself. But You got to know your resources. You got to know what you know and the skills that you have to be able to market yourself and become lucrative that way. But yeah, it's difficult. Should be being shirts at the concerts. What should be being shirts at the concert? Selling shirts or making shirts? Bro, I just thought of it, and maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't make any sense, or if not, but brother, what you can do with the pictures that you take, if it's possible, to be able to photocopy those, like make even collages of those and put them on t-shirts. Put those on t-shirts. Like legitly, like you get signatures from like Elzai, you get signatures from a lot of different artists. I've seen you and you put them up there, bro. You can make collages of those pictures or just have that one picture, maybe a big old photo blew up, throw it on a shirt, you sell it to folks. Because I don't know, I just an idea that popped in my head. So you say talking about shirts, you could do that, my G. It's an idea. It's just popping in my head. Like definitely, had that there. And word is bond. Yup. The 1950s are all over. 9 to 5 is not it. Yes. Yo, what's going on, Kundan? Good to see you. What's the word?
What's the word? You're back. This time you took like a
Oh
month
yeah,
break,
I had
huh?
to. Well, I think that's what, 3 weeks. Yeah,
Yeah.
it took a 3 week break. I was still trying to move around and figure stuff out, but yeah, I had to take that break to make sure I got other things done. But how you doing?
I'm doing good. I think I'm doing better. I think my stomach, I had a sick stomach last week, but I think now I'm okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you're
Mm,
feeling better. And you've been also doing your thing. For those who don't know who this is Kundan. And you can check out a lot of the stuff that Kundan does on all the multiple pages that Kundan has. Again, you shout out your pages because you've consistently been dropping a lot of information as well as a lot of, knowledge and wealth, which again, another way, y'all, if y'all want to do some stuff too, you got Patreon, you got literally online courses, you can create books, etc., etc. But
mhm.
go ahead, Kundan, go ahead, do your thing.
Yeah, I do have a Patreon. If you go to the link in my bio, that's my Patreon, and you can join for as little as $6 a month. And But I approach my, speaking of money and stuff, I approach my Patreon a little differently now. I on for about 4 years. I actually kind of disabled my Patreon account for about 3 or 4 years, and I didn't
Mm,
reactivate it until last year. And this time I have a different approach where for up to the $28 level,
yeah.
um, basically you get nothing in return, like nothing. Like sure, like so because my thing is I want people to join my Patreon to support the free content that I already provide, and I already provide so much. And I'm like, why should I have to provide more
Yes.
for less than minimum wage? Because $28 a month, to be honest, is less than minimum wage for me, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so yeah, but starting at $54 a month, that's when you start getting what they call the Patreon rewards, right? So
Yeah.
that's how I set it up, um, and that way that also encourages reciprocity, and that's why if you go to one of the top three pinned posts now that Instagram allows you to do that, one of
Yeah.
the first ones is my 7 types of unrecognized labor. So,
Yeah.
and that itself is a form of wealth, right? Just these types of labor that I'm giving you, right?
Yes.
So there are there's physical labor and emotional labor that a lot of people already know about, but there are other types like mental labor, the labor of the mind, intellectual labor. That's when I create so many mental models, like my four
Yes.
types of anger, right? Or even this model of the 7 types of labor itself is like an intellectual model. It's my intellectual property. So hence we have the intellectual labor. There is, there's relational labor, logistical labor, just check that real out. And then, yeah, so that's the way I do my Patreon. But yeah, as far as, my pages. I have my main page, which is the Akashic Consultant Chapter, because I give Akashic Records readings, which is specifically from my Hindu culture. It's a pretty much a closed practice as far
Mm-hmm.
as I'm concerned. But I do, from time to time, combine it with bibliomancy, which is an open cultural practice where, you know, uh, you basically look at your bookshelf, ask yourself a question, and
Mm.
then you put your hand in front of your books, and then see which book is calling you, and then you turn the page, and the page you turn is the answer to your question, right? So I give readings for
Mm.
people using bibliomancy sometimes. Uh, yeah, and then there is my Story for a Cause page, which is specifically teaching storytelling tips to climate change activists.
Yeah.
But anybody who wants more influence can learn from that. In fact, in my main Instagram page, if you click the guide button,
Yeah.
there's a free video course, an 8-part video course that I've created, uh, all for free. Most people don't know this. On Instagram, using the guide function, you can pretty
Yeah.
much create your own course, which again is little known, wealth that Instagram provides that you don't know about,
Yeah.
because even Instagram doesn't promote it very much. So, and then my third page is my Clear Focus 7 page, which is
Mm-hmm.
clarity and focus for creative leaders. So I provide tips on organization and on the creative process, which I also do on my Sunday show, the Creative Vulnerability series, which I've been doing for the last 3 months, where you get to share one
Consistently.
finished piece and one unfinished piece. Yeah, consistent. I used to do it every day, and then I switched it to once a week. I did it every day for National Poetry Month for about 3 weeks, and then I switched it to like once a week now, and now
Yeah.
it's become like basically a show, a very consistent show that I've been doing consistently. And you get to share one finished piece, one unfinished piece. The premise is the 4 stages of the creative process, which again, if you go to one of the 3 pinned reels, you'll see an in-depth explanation of that. And then, I give you feedback on how to finish your unfinished piece. So there's that. And then there's my monthly show, my poetry book club that I do once a month. And this month's selection is the selected works of Audre Lorde. This book, uh, I basically started to focus more and more on historical texts like Audre Lorde and Alice Walker and Octavia Butler.
Yeah.
I used to do more local authors that I know personally, but I feel like uh, with things like the overturning of Roe versus Wade and all of these things happening, that
Yeah.
um, people say history repeats itself, right? But in my view, that's kind of a misnomer. It's more that history is covert until it has the power to become overt again.
Mm.
History becomes covert over and over again until it becomes overt.
Mm.
Uh,
Okay. I
and
dig
and
it.
yeah, and if you read, Octavia Butler or even Audre Lorde, they tell you what's going to happen now.
Yeah.
Like especially Butler with her Parable of the Sower, like even down to the dates, the names of the presidents, even the MAGA slogan, even
Yes.
the fact that the president whose last name sounds like Donald Trump's first name in that novel, even though he
Mm-hmm.
was bad enough, it was the next president, not the next, but the next president, that
Yeah.
was like really, really bad. That made it all the way worse.
Yes.
And even that one is matching reality now because it turns out Republicans have already found their new guy, which is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Mm.
Trump is losing power, and that's also getting less coverage. But yeah, that's why you got to read these historical texts to really understand. My general principle that I find is, and some of these books are even banned nowadays, right? Like
Yeah.
The Color Purple has been banned by Alice Walker. Uh, so my
Mm.
general principle that I follow is the more like the more famous or the more popular with the masses a book is,
Yeah.
the more colonial it is. Because the only books and the only authors that are promoted to the masses
Yeah.
are those that act as agents of empire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's similar to tokenism and how this is why I don't believe in representation, right? Where because the only people they allow a seat at the table
Mm-hmm.
are basically, you know, white people with brown and black faces,
Yeah.
whiteness and brown face or black face.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's why I'm starting to like switch my direction into more like uh, authors that are well known within their specific niches, right? But are not
Mm-hmm.
as popular with the masses. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
More for y'all to know about and use
Mm.
when it comes to this stuff. Now, what are your thoughts on the question of how sustainable is a 9 to 5?
Oh yeah. Oh, you already finished that thing, huh?
Oh yeah, I didn't
Sustainable.
have a lot of people in here to speak on that, and I don't like going around in circles speaking on
Yeah.
stuff. So if I can, I just
Right.
move to the next topic. So yeah, that's where we were at talking about how sustainable is a 9 to 5.
It's not sustainable at all. That's why, like in Europe, like especially in the Scandinavian countries, that's actually switching to a 30-hour work week and actually a 6-hour days. They're doing that already.
Yep.
And in fact, and I have a 20-year-old book. I believe this book is at least 10 years old. It's called The 7-Day Weekend. I actually took out the cover and made my own art on top of it. But it's
Mm,
called The 7-Day Weekend. And let me see the publishing date of this. Uh, it's published 2003. So yeah, it is almost 20 years. It's 19 years old. Uh, but this guy
yep.
in Brazil, he created a company based on things that now seem, very, yeah, they were like very far ahead of his time since this book is like almost 20 years old, but he was doing like things like, letting employees interview their potential bosses, yeah, literally kind of having like letting employees choose their hours and things, their days off, when they
Yeah.
want to leave the office, things like that. And he was making, lots of money despite all of that. He had like a multi-million-dollar company. So, the idea that, you have to be a bully to, uh, for profit isn't really true. Like now, if you are greedy, then of course you just have to bully people, the way Amazon's doing.
Yeah.
But you can have sustainable profits. Yeah, I mean Amazon is making people even pee in their bottles, in little bottles, because they can't take a bathroom break.
I didn't know all of that, but oh, wow. Disclaimer. I was playing. But yeah, man, I'm glad. Look, I'm glad you brought that up because I was also I'm mostly was thinking about sustainability in the sense of how long can that really hold out with you being able to survive and pay for a job. You also made me start thinking about sustainable in the sense of again of aging. Of how long can you really end up working a particular job like for
Mhm.
your life long, especially if again for a lot of men who do a very laborious or jobs that are very laborious that it requires them to do a lot of moving, lifting, shifting, and things of all of that sort. Is how long can you even really do that, and knowing that you've again gotten the skill to be able to do so, and if you have the means again to move up in ranks and all the other perks and things that would go along with having a 9 to 5. You made me start thinking about it in that sense of how much is it really putting stress on your body.
Mhm.
But I definitely agree
Yeah,
with y'all
it's
been
it's a lot of
speaking on it.
stress. Yeah. I've actually been listening to, and it ties back to a debt-based economy as well. I've actually been listening
Mm-hmm.
to Braiding Sweetgrass by this indigenous woman, Waller, and I just finished, as you were talking about this, I had just finished the section on, yeah, that basically the profit-based economy, which is a debt-based economy versus a gift economy, which I read about before when I was reading, about the semi indigenous people in Malaysia, right? But this is
Mm,
more about the native indigenous people of the Americas, so in a different context. And yeah, it made me realize how, like, on a whole other level, like how violent this stat-based, profit-based colonial economy really is. Like, I knew it was violent, but
yeah.
when I think of violence, I used to think about, the way people think about violence, like the physical violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of uh, the way we have so many mass shootings and things like that, right? But now it's like now I realize after listening to that section, braiding sweetgrass, actually the
Yes.
system is violent on a fundamental level where it's just mind-boggling.
Mm. Example.
Well, because ultimately, like, let's say, right? Because remember, they even used to have debtors' prisons, right? They don't
Yeah.
anymore. But even without those, right? Think about, like, if I decide not to pay back my debt, right? And
Yeah.
if I'm not the only one, if like millions of people collectively decide not to do and say, hey, we're just not going to pay, how are they going to that? Enforce us
Mm.
to pay back? How are they doing it, right? Ultimately, because they have like many layers, first you have the narrative psychology, the narrative warfare, then you have the
Yes.
political layer, then you have the legal layer, but ultimately, what's backing this up is the military, right? Because
Mm.
ultimately they'll have to force us to give them back the money that apparently we owe,
Yeah.
which by the way we don't really owe since this country is founded on slavery and and stolen land.
Yeah.
So we owe them nothing, but they owe us everything. So again, it's that's another level of violence as well, where it's reverse victimhood, right? In reality, they owe us a debt, but they're pretending
Yeah.
we owe them, and they're backing it with multiple layers. But ultimately, the ultimate layer is violence. But even at those lesser layers, right, the political, the legal, and the narrative psychology, those
Yeah.
are all forms of violence as well, because ultimately they prop up the ultimate layer, which is the military.
Mm. Yes. I mean, that's part of the economy. I spoke on it
Mm-hmm.
earlier that they raised the budget for the military again from I think the 600
Mm-hmm.
billion to either 7 or 800 billion in particular.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I feel you. I feel you on
Yeah. Yeah.
the idea of it being violent.
Oh
You
wait.
back? All
You
right.
are okay. Now you're
Okay, you
back
back.
because you were cutting out for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say also there is the 13th Amendment, right? The loophole in the 13th Amendment, which says that you can continue to enslave people as long as they're criminalized and in prison, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's why they started criminalizing black people for every little thing, like loitering, right? That's why we have a lot of
Mm,
non-violent victimless crimes, like loitering, like possession of weed, the sale of weed. None of these crimes are violent, and none of these have a victim, right?
yeah.
So they're what I call victimless crimes. And to me, like, even the overturning of Roe versus Wade is tied into that, because now they're increasing the state's ability to criminalize even more people,
Mm,
giving them more reasons to put people into prison and have that free prison labor.
yes.
Because now it's not just the women and the people with uteruses that can be criminalized, it's also the doctors, the healthcare professionals, anybody who sides with abortion
Yeah.
is also now complicit in a crime.
Mm. Mm,
So it's like it goes back to the greed that I was talking about. They already have so much power with just using the power of debt. Actually, it's worse than that. It's interest, right?
yes.
Uh, and they already have so much power, but no, they're greedy. They also want the free labor of the prison system because a lot
Mm,
of corporations rely on prison labor as well.
yeah.
So yeah, it's mind-boggling how greedy they are. It's like that's why it's not sustainable, right? It's like this pure like pure greed.
Yes. I mean, and that's just
Yeah.
how the system is. It was set up. I was speaking on it earlier when I was talking about debt, and ultimately that's what money is. And there will always be debt because of the fact that when you have a certain amount of money in circulation, there's always that principal interest. And you can never pay that principal interest unless you print off and you have more money to be able to pay off that principal interest. But when you print off more money, that means you have more principal interest. So there's always going to be that slightness of debt that's always going to be there just because of the fact that that's how the system is set up of an IOU
Yeah,
for
I
you to
think
make
I've
some money.
mentioned this before, right? That bankruptcy is built into the system because money is printed out for that, but never for interest.
Yes. Yeah.
So collective as a collective, will never be able to pay back the interest
Nope.
because there's never enough money for the interest. That's why the economy keeps crashing.
Yes, exactly. And we'll see how for how long, that is going to continue. That's why we have recessions. That's
And
why it's
that's
been there.
violence on a whole other level, right? Because think
Yeah.
about what it does to our mental well-being, emotional well-being, the physical well-being. No wonder, there's a depression epidemic, an opioid epidemic. There is like all of this going on. And think about what it does to the land as well and our relationship with the land, right?
Yes.
Think about things like even planned obsolescence, right?
Hmm.
Where like a lot of electronic appliances are designed, they're broken by design. They're designed to break within 1 or 2 years to force you
Yeah.
to keep buying. They
Yeah.
could make it last forever, but they don't. They could make it last 50 years, 40 years. They don't.
No. No, not at all. And why we always have government shutdowns and having to reevaluate the budget every single time just because we don't have enough money in the budget. But then knowing that we sending off money to other different countries and we owe other different countries and not being able to suffice and use that in our own country. And we get to a point where you have all your money distributed all over the place trying to pay off payments from all over different places and you don't have enough to sustain the economy where you at now. So even
Yeah,
though
and
it can
that's
try to
more
think it's dry,
violence.
yeah.
That's
And
more violence
I look
because
at it
guess
since
what?
go ahead. Guess what? What?
Guess what? So if you study the history of a fiat uh, economy, right? A fiat currency, right? Fiat, by the way, means by decree,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So they took out the gold standard, so it's not even backed by gold, right?
Nope.
So if you look at the history of previous empires that had a fiat-based economy, it's not supposed to last as long as the United States have done. They
Yeah.
never lasted this long. The only reason why the United States have lasted this long is because they've been exporting their inflation to other countries. But how do you do that? How do you
Mm.
export your inflation to other countries? Again, with the might of your military. That's the real
Yes.
secret behind why they have an 80% military budget. That's the real.
Mm.
They have to back up their inflation literally on gunpoint to all these other countries. So literally, all the other countries are propping up the United States. The so-called freedom and opportunity is at the cost of everybody else.
Hmm. And once you become part of that system, you're shackled down into it.
Hmm.
And the more you
Yeah,
power it with what you're doing and your labor, the more that again they're able to continue to reel you in. And yes, you're gonna be like, well, then how do I get up out of that? Well, there's a number of ways to do so, but yeah, in some aspects you will be uncomfortable, But if you're
Mhm.
willing to deal with being uncomfortable and fighting for you to have that particular right to be free, then you'll find the means to be able to do so. But for most of the folks that are in the system and what they're working with now, they are just finding ways to create their own game within that system and how they could play the system. But
Mhm.
having a 9 to 5 is one of the many stepping stones to help you finance yourself to create your own game within the system. But it's definitely
Yeah.
not, it is not, it it cannot be or have longevity, like I said, unless you have an invaluable skill that is also future proof that you can take with you in various different organizations and places and be able to market yourself with. But if you're just a person just flipping burgers at a Wendy's, at a McDonald's, or you're a security guard for a particular company in various places, those positions are replaceable at any moment in time. Same thing with warehouse work. If you're just moving the boxes like I'm doing, I'm just moving boxes and going place to place, you're replaceable at any moment in time because there's always somebody who's going to be in need. They got to pay off all this debt, all their bills, their house and things and stuff of that nature that they can always fill in and take your spot. If you're not up to par or you're just not a fit for it, you're replaceable. But if you have a skill, again, it's a different story. I talked about it earlier, but I keep bringing it up because that's one thing I would say about the education system that they do not stress heavily is having a skill, something skill based that you can use again to be able to commodify yourself. We're very knowledge based. Any program you get into, oh, you're gonna learn about all the different theories, learn about the different practices and where to go to do this, and the services and the resources. You're gonna know all of that, but are you going to have the skill to work any of those different things? And can you translate that skill into something that you can do on the outside to create even more various means of income? Not all the time. They don't stress that because of the fact that the more you're able to market yourself, the more opportunities that you have and create for yourself. And most of the time, that's what school in its inception. Horace Mann, I brought him up before. Horace Mann, in the inception of what schools did, schools were only used to help educate workers on how to do their job. That was it. It didn't show them, oh, you can use this skill to be able to go about and create your own business. No, it's you work the job, you fit the mode, you fit that cog in the system, and that's all you need to do. But when we don't need you as a cog in the system anymore, we can throw you out and you're disposable at any moment in time. So it being sustainable, no, you just have to be able to grab that skill and use it. But man, it's a convoluted thing because we're in a system of capitalism, so you got to go about the rules and how that's played.
Yeah, on that note, I do highly recommend one of these two books. This is called The Last Safe Investment by
Mm.
Brian Franklin and Michael Ellsberg. Actually, Michael
You got a
Ellsberg
book
is
for
kind of
everything.
he's a good friend of mine, and actually, I have several interviews with him on my YouTube channel that you can check out. And also, Deep Work by Cal Newport. And I want to talk more about deep work along the lines of
I've
what you
seen
said,
that book
because
before.
yeah, I posted like about 2 or 3 posts about this book, and basically he talks about how within the next 10 years, right, as the economy is changing because of automation and artificial intelligence and things like that, a lot of jobs are gonna be replaced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like even truck drivers might be replaced by self-driving trucks, right? Things like that. Uh, so basically, he's saying that in the next 10 years, there are going to be only three types of people who are going to survive and thrive, right? One
Mm-hmm.
is the owners of capital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then second is the people who can program these intelligent machines, right? The programmers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's why coding is so important right now
right,
for
including the
folks.
data scientists and all that. And then the
Hmm.
third kind are the people who can do really, who can master difficult skills and do deep work. And deep work is basically uh, things that require intense amounts of focus while
Mm,
you're alone for long periods of time, right?
yeah.
Things that require a lot of willpower as well. And so basically he's saying that, you know, the likelihood that you're going to be an owner of capital is very small, right? Uh, Especially if if you're not, the child of a rich person or things like that, you can marry into it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, programming again is a very hard skill to master as well, right? So now, so that leaves most people with just the third option to be able to master the ability to do deep work, and that's what the book is about. It teaches you the time management skills to do that. Like,
Again, Kundan is a wealth of knowledge. Have so much recommendations on books. That's where you read a book a day at this point, and you just have an encyclopedia just in your mind and at any point just there with you, which I'm appreciative of and grateful. But yeah, it's it's I'm not gonna say it's now or never. It's already been now. That it's been now for many years that we have this situation and stuff like this going on, and you have to make your choices on what you're going to end up doing and how you're going to continue to survive and make a way in this world, especially again if you're going
yeah,
to be a part of society. But go ahead.
already you see the self-checkout, counters at the
Yep.
supermarket,
Yep.
right? Uh, and even Amazon, in some places, have experimented with totally automated Amazon Go stores where there's not
Yes.
a single human staff. You just go with your phone and you just you take out stuff, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you basically take a scan and then you just walk out, and it charges your phone.
Yep. That's where
So
that's why future proof and
So
stuff. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
mm-hmm.
that the age of automation is coming. And it's a great irony because the promise of automation was that it was supposed to equalize everything and help us not have to work so hard and have
Yeah.
finally finally like almost like a gift economy with things like universal basic income and things like that, right? That was the
Yes.
dream, but now the dream has been usurped by greed, like I said earlier, right? Like I referenced earlier. We can still have the dream if we push for universal basic income as far as more on a, you ask what can we do on a collective level?
Yeah.
We gotta push for universal basic income as things get worse and worse with automation. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And ultimately, again, I'm gonna go back and speak on you talking about the gold standard and the U.S. not being based or having a backing in the gold standard, and that's where I know we talked about Gaddafi and the Green Book and things of that sort beforehand, and
Right.
how what
Yeah.
Gaddafi was trying to do with creating honestly an economy for Africa, and it end up becoming you could end up becoming a superpower because of the resource, and you already know the wealth of
Almost like
resources
a
is there
United
within
States of
Africa.
Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very troubling because again, when we think about it, in a system, so having a 9 to 5, having something that ties you to the system and being able to have to do something and create, make money, all those particular cases, it's set up that way that once you get in, you are in. It's almost like I've said it before with you and want to say it again. It is like having a job is one of the biggest pyramid schemes ever. Like it's literally there. Once you inside of the scheme or you're inside of the group, it's so hard to get out because of the fact that you've already delved in your time and your effort and your money into it. And some people are like, man, but I still can get the perks if I just keep working up. Like I just gotta keep doing this and gotta be able to share and have my perks and money. But not knowing at the back end that just for you to be in that job, it's funny, just for you to be at your job. there's the taxes that are taken away. Whether if you have kids, there's a tax where that happens. You got your health taxes covered. You have literally there's your federal single that's tax that's covered taken out of your check. So even though you get, say you make maybe $1,000 a week, but part of that $1,000 is taken out for taxes as well as other sets. If you're in a company that takes out different things at that point and bonus, you don't even get your full 1,000. You might maybe get 750, 800. So in all those aspects of that time too, money's being taken from you just like that. And on top of that, when it comes back to taxes, depending on what state you in, they'll also get you there too. In California, it's basically close to 30% for folks who make it under the regular tax bracket. So 30% of what you make is put done in
Mm-hmm.
taxes. But then on top of what's already taken out of your stuff, sometimes you don't even get that back tax wise, because if you're on
Mm-hmm.
exemption or all these other different things, ultimately that money, since it's not backed by anything, you are what's backing it, because you're bought into that. So you're a part of that now. So for you to even get out of that, you have to find a way to be able to put something in there to back it yourself so you can get away. Because if not, you're the one that's backing it. We're backing it. We're giving it the power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. By the way, before she became vice president, Kamala Harris, when she was still in the Senate, did propose a monthly economic crisis support act, which called for $2,000 monthly payments to most U.S. residents through the pandemic and beyond. And it was co-sponsored by Bernie and I think Senator Ed Markey. But yeah, I think
Oh, it never happened.
it never happened. Yeah, because I think there was not enough support in Congress, and yeah, it just fizzled out.
Why?
It's
Why?
why.
Yeah, for them. I mean, you thinking of course, I've talked about Occupy Wall Street again in the
Hmm.
99%, the 1%. Why? What's advantageous for them to do so? Because again, a lot of the stuff we think of,
Hmm.
it's not out the goodness of people's heart. It's not for the better of humanity. Again, like you said, you have the greed, greed being on that. So what am I going to get out of giving $2,000 of the money that circulates that we can use for other stuff to the U.S. people? Why?
Hmm. Like the defense budget. Yeah,
Why?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, in fact, like even on a smaller scale, when somebody tries to do it, like the fight against that is so huge. Like in Stockton, this black guy became a mayor,
Mm-hmm.
and on the premise that he would do universal basic income on a trial basis for a limited number of people in the town, and he did it for the 4 years that he was mayor,
Yeah.
and it was actually successful. It was like $500 monthly to like a few people, and it was supposed to be an experiment and to see what would happen. But yeah, like there was this like newspaper in town that tried to like completely destroy his reputation and force him
Yep.
out as mayor. And
Yep.
he got forced out of being a mayor last year, pretty much. And so it's like, even on that small scale, like they hate it, like they don't want
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Be I'm not gonna say I know fully why. The things that I can theorize of why, one of them is in their mind. It creates a crutch for people, depending on who you're giving it to, that they
Mm,
become reliant. But guess what? We're already reliant on all of the stuff that we're already doing. So that to me
exactly.
is redundant. Two, there it is. I'm trying to remember the specific name of it, but there's different levels of support when it comes to agendas, and one of them is talking about just institutional. There's one where it's just a local type of support, and then there's one where um it's almost like a post dramatic growth, of where literally I don't have the right terms for them because I learned it
Mm,
in undergrad, but I not undergrad, but in graduate school, but I can't remember specifically. But basically, um, it's basically a way of one, they just give aid to fix a problem, but the problem still can persist. The other one is they'll give aid to a problem, but you have to work it off. And then there's the last one where they give you aid, they show you how to do that skill, that ultimately you can use that skill to provide your own aid. And that's what, again, this system doesn't want to end up doing. They don't want to provide you with the skills to be able to get you out of your own debt and create your own financial freedom in your own time and freedom. So they don't even want to give you the crutch, because they feel if they give you the crutch, that might also be able to work to give you the means to do that. So why
Mm-hmm.
am I going to do that? Why we don't need to end up giving y'all 2,000?
Right,
Why
that's
would you
their
want to give you
reasoning.
500? Yeah, that's. I
But
mean,
I
I
think the real
theorize. I don't
reason
know, but again,
might be that if people have too much free time, it'll give them too much time to think. And if they have time to think, then they have time to think about how ridiculous the system is. Then they have time to think about revolution, a real revolution, and not the fake revolutions we've been having.
yep. Revolution starts in the mind. It starts in the self. It can be televised, but televised through your own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I again, I'm with you on that. I agree. Dude, we don't know their full intent. That could be it. Multiple other things can end up being it. But the main takeaway from a lot of this, y'all, really is that how sustainable is a 9 to 5? It is, if we have to do the scale of very sustainable to neutral to not sustainable or very unsustainable, I would definitely say it's not sustainable. I'm not going to say very unsustainable, because again, that's just, life is unpredictable, but it's just not sustainable to a point that should not be your only option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not sustainable for you personally, and it's not sustainable for the earth either. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very true. Ah, any other comments and thoughts that you have on this, Kundan, before we go ahead and also just wrap up the rest of the show?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just educate yourself about this stat-based economy. Read historical texts. Also read international authors, and not just be limited to U.S. authors. Really. And yeah, read banned books, unpopular texts. I think that's really, really important in these times. Yeah, but also read, books that could help you in the meantime, like The Last Wave Investment and Deep Work. Uh, Even though I have my reservations about these books, because I would say read them with the caveat that
Yeah,
they're only applicable if this colonial system continues the way it does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Take everything and any type of
Mhm.
information you have with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And if it applies, work with it, and know, again, like you said, the caveats, the ins and outs, the
Mhm.
pros and the cons, all those stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, thank you so much again, Kundan, for
Mhm.
coming in like you always do and sharing your thoughts and your perspectives on all of this. Uh, Always got to give you your flowers. Appreciate you and thank you for your time, as well as thank you to everybody who's been coming through and supporting. I know we've been going for a minute, but again, appreciate y'all regardless of still supporting, asking, checking on what's going on. Cause yeah, you want to
Mhm.
know what's the word. So just know we here. We take our breaks. That's how life goes. It's up and down, but we're definitely here. But to wrap up for tonight's show, when it comes to current events, just know that for you to create a plan, for you to have a way, again, to protect yourself, whether if that's you, your family members, everyone that's there, please inform yourself. Whether if you read, whether if you listen, whether if you like to write down notes, whatever it is, please be informed of what's going on and happening around you. Because right now, there's stuff popping off everywhere. So please inform yourself. Two, when it comes to debt, ultimately, my perspective of debt basically is that money is debt. So the more money that you end up having and the more debt that you accrue, there is a way for you to use debt to your advantage, But again, that's on a financial scale of you learning financial literacy, et cetera, of doing your work. But ultimately, the way that you use debt and how debt is created, it ties you to something where you have to continue to pay and pay and pay to make sure that, again, you get to have all these services that you got. And lastly, when it comes to how sustainable a 9 to 5 is, on that scale that I talked about before, for me, it's not sustainable. This should not be your only option, your only means of income. It can be one of those because, again, the ebb and flow of life is unpredictable. So you never know when, especially if your job is not future proof, that you will be there forever to be able to pay for your stuff. So find ways creatively to not only have a knowledge base, but a skills based approach on things so that you can use those skills in everywhere to be able to commodify what you do, whether if it is a Patreon, whether if it is doing online courses, YouTube, providing services for other people, making things for other people, whatever you can end up doing so that you can have multiple ways of, if one way doesn't work, you still have other ways and means to make it in this system that we're in. But with that, y'all, this has been another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays. I'm appreciative again of y'all's times and everything. We'll be back next Wednesday, as long as nothing happens, with another show, another topics. And again, shouts out to all those who watch this as well as watching this later on Instagram or YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to your boy at A.D.V.I.S. Speaks. Again, as well as follow all other people that's in here as well too. Speaking of Kundan down here, Makashik, do your thing like you usually do and shout your stuff
Akashic
out.
Consultant Cover. Yeah. Yeah, follow
And
that main account, and from there you can also follow Story for a Cause and Clear Focus 7. Yeah.
yes. All those different things again. Because again, at the end of the day, this is not only about me, it's also about the community. We come together and support each other in any way means, as well as elevate each other through thought and conversation. Because at the end of the day, for us to be able to continue on and have a plan on stuff, we got to talk about these things. Let's talk about these topics. But other than that, thank y'all for tuning in. I've been your brother A.D.V.I.S. This has been Kundan. We'll catch y'all again for another episode of What's the Word Wednesdays next Wednesday. And just tune in and be ready to go. But other than that, peace and one love. We're out.
Peace. Yeah.